Hello and welcome to Premier Study in Investing. It's great to have you. Thanks for stopping by. Today, I'm going to go through an exercise that I think is really important for us to do and one that I have not done before. This video could kind of bomb, but what I'm attempting to do is summarize the biases that I have, especially as I was thinking a couple days ago about where have my efforts and my research really been focused over the course of the last year with this channel. And I sort of realized that I spent a lot of time looking at David Rogers Webb's work, which to summarize is essentially David is trying to restore personal property rights to securities that we hold in our brokerages. The other thing that I've spent a lot of time looking at is the Moderna story, as you've seen a number of videos, especially related to their fundamental value, their cash burn rate, some of their sales, some of their Q3 and Q4 reports, but also in light of the political narrative that is surrounding anything related to do with COVID, the science, anything related to do with the new administration. Obviously, Bobby Kennedy has been a big one. Some look at Ray Bhattacharya, who was recently confirmed by Congress. And how am I thinking about these people? And so I'm going to try to break it down in sort of a logical way, hopefully as a template for you to maybe ask some similar questions about how are you interpreting the world and trying to separate sort of my beliefs from my investing strategies, because I think it's dangerous to try to intertwine those, and it makes the most sense to us to kind of have a unified kind of person as far as these are my thoughts and so I'm going to invest in such a way. But I realized recently it started to break down a little bit for me, and I had to question some of my own thoughts. I don't know if that's making a lot of sense, but that's my basic summary. So David Rogers Webb, essentially he is this author, he claims to be a prior hedge fund manager, well-spoken guy, a lot of research, definitely has gotten some following. A lot of people really picked up on his work and said, wow, this is a big deal, because David's thesis is essentially, and the push of what he's trying to do is to convince readers and his audience that somewhere over the last 50 years, there was a couple of different steps that changed. Dematerialization, meaning that we don't have, when we buy a share of something, we don't get like we used to, like a certificate with a unique ID on it. I've talked about this before. And then kind of 1994, there were some changes to the UCC. This is the Uniform Commercial Code in the United States, adopted by all 50 states, which David argues in events of bankruptcies that people can lose their shares. Essentially that we don't have property rights like we do a car that's paid off completely. And he relies then a lot on a Lehman Brothers and JP Morgan Chase event it didn't really get wrapped up until like 2022, but where JP Morgan was both the custodian and the institution with priority claim to those assets. And so they took the assets, and eventually through a number of lawsuits, people were able to get back their funds, but of course they didn't have them for a long time. So this is essentially, you could see it's kind of scary stuff. And so I guess I got into it because I wanted to know, like, what was the worst case scenario. I needed to kind of do some risk management and some thinking about what are people saying as far as the worst case scenario, and this by far was the worst. And so David is this guy. David and a ragtag team of a couple lawyers, they all seem to be salt of the earth. Great people, well-intentioned. They are picking up traction in different states. Recently, James Patrick, with the Big Picture with James Patrick is the name of the YouTube channel. They put up a House committee hearing on a bill in New Hampshire. And you could hear David's side, David's presentation. You could hear sort of the rebuttal. So I've been thinking about that. I'm like, is this real? I've been thinking, wow, I hope these guys can really make progress, and that we could kind of bring this to people's attention. I've definitely brought it to my friends and family's attention and said, this looks real. This is getting real hearings at multiple states, somewhere between like 10 and 13 U.S. states. I read the book. I watched the documentary a number of times. I looked at the footnotes. Most people have not really been that interested, but I found it very interesting. I mean, outside of the YouTube communities, friends and family who aren't big finance people, they don't care. And I guess I got to ask myself, wow, David's cause seems just. Wow, it seems like, as a person with a finance degree, I don't easily want to go back on my training and forfeit all that time and knowledge that I've acquired and just throw in the towel and say it's a rigged game, or this is some kind of, there's like an emotional part to it, you know what I mean? There's an emotional part where it's like, I don't want to give up on the whole thing. Perhaps it's salvageable. I mean, it seems like this David Rogers Webb guy is right or onto something. Obviously, I'm not the only one that thinks that. It is getting these hearings. But like, what narrative do I have to be playing in the back of my mind in order to believe that David is going to be successful? The thing with Moderna is, who are the heroes, if I want to say that, of that story? You have a fundamental story. There has been a huge short interest. You had a lot of insiders selling up until recently. In February, the CEO and who is the other guy? Hodge, H-O-G-E. So I think it's Stephen bought and sell, and I can't remember Hodge, but Stephen bought $5 million worth of shares at like between $30 and $31. And this Hodge individual, I think he's the president. I want to say he's the president. That seems weird, but that's what I think his title is, honestly. Bought $1 million, again, between $30 and $31 per share. And so, it's like, why would those guys, Stephen has, I think, the CEO has something like over 9 million shares. And this purchase was for worked out to be about 130,000 shares. Like, why buy 130,000 shares if you already have over 9 million? That seems weird. I don't know. But what is the story, basically? In a nutshell, the story is that scientists who were somehow able to do the science and true to their profession have been chipping away at these things, as far as all kinds of issues, safety signals. And if I was going to pick one that's like the most punchy and powerful, it'd be that there was a recent article that came out just on my phone under the Moderna story about Bobby Kennedy saying that this is the most deadly vaccine in human history. I think that was his quote. It's very, very close. If that's not exactly it, I'll try to put it up on the screen when I go to edit. But it's like, wow. I mean, wow. You'd think that would... there's a story there, right? There's something to get behind. People not dying and people not being disabled. And I don't have any really, really close personal friends that have had serious adverse events, or I think there was a guy that was probably 45, died in his sleep. Apparently there's something that happens there with the adrenal system that kicks on when we wake up. But that could be nothing, that could be from something else. I don't have proof about that. I had a friend that basically has like hearing loss at age 40. Probably needs hearing aids. Really can't hear. That came on, right in the last couple of years. Is that proof of anything? Not really. So it's not like there's some like personal tragedy, but yet I still find myself kind of rooting for the underdogs, rooting for the people, feeling like that somehow the warp speed and all that stuff was just a huge money grab. And that it wasn't safe enough for me. And that I wish things were different. Now, inside that Moderna story is really a fundamental assessment that I'm doing as a finance person. But then there's also this ideological thing about justice and people coming to the rescue, heroes. And the image that really came to mind was a religious one. So of David and Goliath, this sort of strong, banking lobbyists, very strong, big pharma, very strong, and then these sort of David-type types, these, you know, I mean, David was just a boy in that story. If you're not familiar with the David and Goliath story, which most people are, but I mean, it was a story, a sort of redemption. He was sort of a chosen by God, right, to not only rescue the people and win this fight with like super long odds, but to lead the people and lead the country and all that stuff. And it's like, I just had to ask myself, am I not overlaying like that type of archetypal story onto what I'm seeing here? And I sort of felt like I was, I sort of felt like when I paused and thought about it, I had to really ask. I guess I was sort of reading just some of the dialogue, I guess some of the Whitney Webb stuff, but also just sort of an article that went kind of back and forth and said, pro RFK, anti-RFK, pro RFK, anti-RFK, pro RFK, and kind of went back and forth through it. And I just found myself feeling like, do I really think this guy and Ray Bhattacharya and maybe a couple other people are going to be able to, revolutionize, rework, totally re-engineer the pharmaceutical industry so this doesn't happen again and people aren't injured and there's no more, gain of function tomfoolery happening in the defense sector. And I just thought, no, I mean, let's be honest, like the probability of these people really winning, because you got to put a number on it. I have to put a number on it. And I think that's what investing is. Investing is creating financial models and putting probabilities on different scenarios. So what would I like? Well, I would like to kind of not live in such an insane place, a scary place. It seems like we lost some safety. There was a bunch of media lies. There was a bunch of mandates. There was a bunch of lockdowns. There was loss of income, a hit to the economy that maybe has been propped up by, STEMI checks and a lot of government spending and a lot of jobs created in government to kind of keep this thing running. So what do I want? I want to have a safe place. I want to have peace. I'd like to see apologies. I'd like to see, truthfulness. I mean, that's not going to happen. I have to realize, like, that's not going to be happening. I think some of the emotions that I've had have been, just everyone feeling the inflation, housing affordability in a lot of places. Canada has probably been the worst. And this was even before the Trump tariffs and all that stuff or whatever is going to happen with all that. But in the United States, housing affordability has been very, very difficult. And then personal challenges for me is just gainful employment, feeling like I did really sort of follow the course. A lot of people say this, follow the course as far as the education, and just hasn't sort of paid off in the ways that I had hoped so much. So there's been more struggle than I anticipated. I guess which kind of leads me at the end to kind of go back to, like, am I looking at this in religious terms? And the religious terms that come to ideas, like, of course, David and Goliath, like I said before. But the other concepts are like concepts of justice, and then these concepts of like a redeemer, a savior. I think in terms of justice, I had to realize, like, well, when is most of the justice going to take place in my personal religious framework? And it's like, well, if all of the justice happens this week, why do we have a judgment day? And I kind of had to ask myself, it's a little bit of an odd question, but it's like, when is most of the justice and the restoration and these types of things going to take place? Seems like people are pretty much going to do whatever they're going to do. Maybe, this might be an impacting thing too, was I got this book. And so it's not a very happy read, to be quite honest, but I wanted to figure out, who is this RFK Jr. guy? What does he really think? And he doesn't pull any punches, and he's pretty clear right out of the gate. He thinks there's a pharmaceutical and healthcare system fraught with fraud, so and criminality. So you don't even really have to get through the whole book to figure that out. But I don't know. You have pardons. You have people that it seems like justice is very, very slow and delayed, and maybe not until the afterlife do a lot of things really get sorted out. Again, it's a religious belief, and I could be off there. I might change my mind. The Redeemer thing is this individual that we trust in. So I think for a lot of people it was Trump. More so for me would be RFK Jr., Ray Bhattacharya, David Rogers Webb, John Campbell, a lot of the people that have done a lot of the research and helped non-medical people learn. I guess I should say just for you that, I mean, politics has always been problematic for me from my childhood. My dad would get real upset about the injustices of like Halliburton and the Gulf War and the draft dodge by Bush and all these things. And he always saw himself as like a hardworking, guy that mostly not a big, pensioner or that most of his money was going to come from stock investing or something, but it was just getting up, going to work, and putting in the hours. And I think he was like a traditional Democrat in that sense. But he was always upset. I always remember before I was even slightly kind of interested in these things, he was upset. And I remember thinking like, what is the right degree to which you should really even care about these things? If we are not going to go into government, we're going to vote once every 4 years. I mean, it's a lot of energy to get into it. And for him, it was always like this sort of, well, for me, it was always this negative experience. So like I haven't voted since 2007 for the 2008 election. And so I'm just thinking through, like, I think you can see without me summarizing, but what I'd like to have happen and the world that I'd like to live in, as wonderful and beautiful and as I might have it in my mind, and maybe as a path that I can see wanting and other people wanting, it's like there are a team of people in the healthcare administration now, at least in the United States, that might have an okay chance if they don't get like completely sucked into something like seed oils to make some changes. But is it enough to really say that, I should be strongly short Moderna or strongly long Moderna? Right now I have essentially like straddle positions, but on net I'm short because the fundamentals are so bad and the trends are so bad. Although I think it could, who knows? Who knows what the next time is? I think there is something to that story as far as, hey, last time we had Trump tariffs, they were effective and economy in China was really hurting, and then all of a sudden, bada bing, bada boom, global pandemic time. Well, are we like about to replay that movie? I think certainly the gain of function tech is there, no doubt. With bird flu, we saw that in the last video related to Moderna. Robert Greenfield, former CDC director, said that the papers were written in 2012 to do gain of function in order to make bird flu transmissible from human to human, and published. So anybody that wants to do that can do that. With a fatality rate between 25 and 50%, though, I mean, you'd be talking about some revolutions like biblical catastrophe, massive sci-fi, Book of Eli type of dystopian horror film that would come to pass. Probably worse than, I think, a nuclear device going off again, quite honestly. But I don't know, maybe Tamiflu would come to the rescue, or maybe just something worse would come to the rescue. Yeah, so that's about all. I mean, just for whatever that's worth, trying to break down each of our personal biases into like these hero stories, whether they're coming from religious narratives that we kind of try to put on top of everything. David happened once. You had the judges happen, but there was many, many years, hundreds of years where, God didn't speak. And, we have to think like what's kind of the normal thing, even if you're religious. It's not just like the highlight reel, right? There's a lot of just things where not much is happening, and there's no like miraculous, huge revival times for most of the time. What's your political situation? I'm not a diehard Democrat or Republican, so I don't feel like that really gets me. But I think what does make me vulnerable is kind of having this like anti-corporate, distrust of corporates sentiment, without which kind of blinds me to their power, their patents, their ingenuity, the amount of capital, their amount of labor that they have. If they're in the S&P 500, like they are onto something. They have a lot of money coming in. They have a lot of sales. It's not like they're just nothing. This ball of fraud and corruption. I mean, they are probably have some good things going on most of the time. You do have Enrons, et cetera, but. And then I guess I need to take personal agency because my personal ambitions and hopes for home ownership and getting to some level of financial whatever success is in my mind, I can't really dump that on a pharmaceutical company, right? Like Moderna or I just can't. Although I don't think that means that I'm forced to stay in the stock market. Because I think that David Rogers Webb is going to lose probably, that it would be logical to start moving out of the stock market. Okay. And then related to Moderna, I suppose it should be something that's some kind of short-term pulling of their products. It is probably not going to happen. As much as that might satisfy certain people's hurt or pain or disgust, that we might like Moderna to be some kind of a scapegoat and to see that stock go to zero as sort of a justice. I mean, that's not going to restore any disabled person's health or bring any loved ones back from the dead or, reverse all those months and years of fear or jobs we didn't get or inflation that we're feeling now. I mean, even if you short it and make a bunch of money, it doesn't change the past. So let's be honest about what we're looking for from these investments. And if they start to become justice or religious workings or some type of redemption for things we lost in the past, we have to, I think, as investors, learn to put that in check from a behavioral investment perspective and be brutally honest with ourselves about why we're investing in or against and how much that has to do with ideology. Thanks. As soon as I got done shooting that, I looked over at my desk, saw hijacking Bitcoin, realized, well, there's just another example. A story where you had perhaps a beautiful technology that was sort of corrupted. And so it's like, man, I'm sort of running out of getting hit with a lot of like negative stories here. Stories of corruption. And well, that was another one. So even in the sort of the prime coin in terms of Bitcoin has this sort of awful dark side to it. So that was probably somewhere in some of that thinking as well, as far as what the heck is going on and how we, maybe more than just me, people are looking for some kind of revolution of the good.